Hi, Katie?
Yes.
All righty.
Oh, goodness.
Cell phone charger back there if you need one.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. Gonna go out and enjoy the nice weather today.
Yeah, headed out to a boat.
A lot of fun. That's great.
Yeah.
It's a perfect day to be on the boat.
I know. We were gonna do one last summer and got rained out.
Oh, no.
The time or two that we tried.
Sure.
So we lucked out today.
There you go. Yeah, I know it was supposed to rain all weekend, but then the weather changed its mind, which is great.
Yeah. Lucky for us.
Yeah. So someone's saying it's looking like it's getting smoky from the Canada fire again, so
Yeah.
I wonder if that's coming in. I know it was pretty bad a couple of weeks ago.
Gosh, it was super bad. I work out in the suburbs, and that's where my office is. So I was driving back into the city.
Uh-huh.
I was at Damon. You know, when you're there, like,
Oh, yeah.
it's like you can see the skyline, of course, always.
Yeah, but not...
Couldn't see a thing. I was like,
Nothing.
this is eerie.
Yes. Yeah, I was driving somebody. I'd actually had Uber all the way out to Naperville. So I picked somebody up in Naperville that was coming to here, and I was like, watch, when we get to downtown, you could see, you just can't see the buildings. It's
Yeah.
just all grayed out. She's like, oh my gosh, you can't tell because you just think, oh, it's smog, or maybe it's a little foggy, or clouds, or whatever. But then once you look at the buildings, you're like, yeah, you can't see a mile in any direction.
No,
Yeah.
no. So crazy.
But who knows? We might get some rain that'll make it go away, but who knows?
Yeah. It's definitely like summer showers weather.
Yeah, exactly. Are you from Chicago originally?
I'm not. I'm from Atlanta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I went to Atlanta actually around this time last year. I had a little road trip out there, so that was fun.
Did you melt down? It's very hot and humid right now.
I'm from Los Angeles, so
Okay.
it doesn't get hot for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's fun. California car in front of us. That's funny.
Nice.
But yeah, so yeah, it was very humid. That's definitely something they don't have in California. There's no humidity anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a surprise to deal with. But
Yeah.
once you just wear light clothing, it's not that bad.
Yeah, you just learn to dress for it.
Yeah, exactly. What brought you to Chicago?
Part work, part my husband.
Okay.
We were still dating at the time, but it had been like 6 years of long distance.
Oh, wow.
Because we did long distance all through college.
Okay.
And so he had gotten a job here in Chicago, and I was like, oh, I can transfer with my company, so
Wow. So
I'll
you
meet
said,
I'll meet you there.
We'll make it work. That's
Yeah.
fun. How did you two meet with the distance being something like that?
The high school lunch table,
then?
first day of senior year.
Oh, okay. And so you
Yeah.
just met in high school and then went to different colleges?
Exactly, yeah.
And made it work. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Wow.
We didn't want to change our college plans, but we're like, we're going to stay together as long as we're still having fun.
Sure.
And it was always fun.
Sure. So far still is. You got married, so it must still be great. I
Yeah,
guess.
right?
Yeah.
We'll be together like 12 years this
Oh,
year.
wow. Oh, wow. Getting
Yeah.
close to that, it's been more time together than not.
Yes,
you
yeah.
know?
We did the math. We're 5 years out from
Wow.
from like our halfway.
Wow. What did you study in school?
I was in the business school at UVA.
Okay.
So like marketing. And when I graduated, I moved to New York and was doing advertising.
Mm-hmm.
And it was kind of like the place to be for what I wanted to do.
Sure.
And then when he made it to Chicago, it was like, oh, I can do lots of ad work in Chicago to be had.
Definitely, yeah. I was talking to somebody who was working for a pretty big ad firm, and they were saying that Chicago downtown has a lot of marketing, a lot of advertising.
Definitely, yeah.
That's
There's so
cool.
many like CPG firms that are, situated in and around the Chicago area.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of work to be had.
Hmm.
Whereas my clients tended to be more like tech and B2B, banking.
Sure.
Here it's a lot of like food, consumer goods,
Sure.
that sort of thing. So it was fun to kind of work on lots of different clients.
Yeah, different niche, different environments, and that requires a different type of marketing, right, to get the word out for that type of thing.
Right.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense.
And I work in product innovation now.
Product innovation.
Yeah, so it's still kind of within the marketing function,
Uh-huh.
but I work at a big food company, and it's all about like taking consumer research and like insights and then turning it into a product. And then like, how do we make it? What are we calling it? How are we pricing it? How do we sell it? So you get to kind of flex some of those muscles.
Yeah, that's really interesting, the overall psychology of it, right? You're like, well, what are people indicating? What are they looking for?
Yeah.
How do we market it to them? Sure, you've got to get all that to align in order to get a product sold. That makes sense.
So it's fun. Lots to learn. Definitely working kind of at a manufacturing company, but it was nice to be able to use a lot of the skills or like, ways of thinking that I was familiar with and then apply them in a new way.
Sure. Yeah, I find that fascinating. There's this book somebody had recommended that I ordered called Why We Buy. And she did the same thing. She was product design and building design for like marketing for like a store that you would go. It was like a camping goods store.
Cool.
So she was like, here's the psychology of like why we pick the music we pick, why we keep the temperature the way it is, how we structure things, right? With how, what's the psychology of a person that goes into a store? What are they looking for? What are they thinking? And how are ways that you can kind of put places where they're gonna more likely to see something like a sale or they're gonna notice it.
That stuff's fascinating.
Yeah. It's the psychology of people coming from being hunter-gatherers to foragers and finders at a store, you know. It's really interesting how that psychology is applied and how it works against us. I was also listening to this really great podcast where these guys were talking about the neurology and the neuropsychology of advertising and marketing and how media is structured, right? Like, the different principles of like, well, if you want, stuff that you don't even realize is mechanical, like the cliffhanger, right?
Yeah.
The reason there's cliffhangers in media is because people, the brain itself wants to complete a cycle of action.
Right.
It wants to have something done. Or doom scrolling. If there is no thing, you're just going to keep going forever because you want that completion. And there's no, on Facebook, there's no, okay, you've done 50 or 20 or whatever. It just goes on forever and ever. And these two mechanisms are psychological, where you could get somebody wanting to finish the cycle of action, wanting to do more, and that'll get them on a loop where they're looking and staying and searching and getting more updates. So I think stuff like that is really interesting.
It is. I mean, I think of how people are engineering products or platforms like TikTok to capitalize on the way that the brain works, shorter attention spans,
Yeah, and that's exactly it. Because it's like they do the research, they know what it is, and that's where you as a consumer, quote unquote, have to be like, well, this is geared to make me stuck here.
Yeah, you have to go in with that awareness.
Yeah, and be like, okay, so how do I fight it and stuff, which is really interesting. Have you found you've changed maybe behaviors that you had now that you've gotten the education and gotten that work? Have you found that this is something you don't do or a hard line for yourself?
A little bit. I definitely try to be an informed consumer. I think it's the same thing about taking a media studies class or a political media studies class about how you need to be a discerning consumer of the news no matter what your source is.
Sure.
So definitely just kind of looking for bias in media that I consume.
Yeah.
And just the awareness of that helps me to make better choices because I know what's happening, or I know everybody's goals might not be totally aligned with why I'm consuming that content.
Sure.
So a little bit of that.
Yeah, that's very true. All media, news media, doesn't matter which political side of the aisle they're on or who they're talking to, they're sensationalizing because they know the psychology is if you tell people something that's going to make them outraged,
Yes.
they're going to want to watch more. They're going to come back for it.
Everything's
if you say,
salacious. It's all
Exactly.
infotainment.
Yes,
like,
yeah.
yeah, it's you have to keep a critical eye, even though it's quote journalism or it's a
Right.
reputable source.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it's a dollars and cents game these days.
Exactly. It's a business. They're in a business. Even if they don't want to play that game, they have to in order to survive.
Right. So yeah, I think there's definitely some of that.
Oh yeah, see, look how gray it is over there.
Super gray.
Yeah. It's got to be smoky. Hopefully you got a mask,
Yeah.
right? I think people just forgot we needed those still.
Yeah, I was looking at the weather to see if we were gonna get rain, and it was like air quality poor.
Oh no, yeah, I
Yeah.
didn't see the air quality was different.
Yeah, it says unhealthy for sensitive groups. So
Okay,
it's not
okay.
as bad as it was.
Yeah.
But not great. I think normally we're so spoiled
Yeah.
with fresh air in this area.
We're pretty decent. I moved here from LA, so I'm like, air quality.
Yeah. We're doing great.
Yeah, there's not enough smog out here, but
Yeah.
now I'm like, yeah, this is about right. This is about right for me.
That was kind of a wild thing, like when I moved to Chicago. It was just like how blue the water is, and that you actually like don't feel weird like going for a dip like by downtown.
Sure.
Blew my mind. Like I lived in Manhattan prior, and it's like,
Oh yeah, don't touch the water.
yeah, don't go in the Hudson.
Yeah, what are you doing? Yeah, don't go anywhere near it.
Yeah, go to the Hudson and then go to like an ER.
Yeah.
And, get your shots up to date.
Exactly. That's very true. Which I hear they're making that better now, but it was so toxic for so long.
Yeah.
But now they're saying like wildlife is coming back
Really?
and all that. Yeah,
Oh,
so that's
wow.
pretty cool. Because the Hudson Bay and the Hudson River used to have a ton of shellfish that would grow, where like there would be islands of shells because
Yeah.
there were so many that they were just all over, and it was a great source of food for the natives that lived there. But that water became so toxic that they were just going away. They were basically non-existent, but now they're coming back because it's getting cleaner.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so hopefully it would be nice if that's, because it's, I went to Manhattan, actually probably about 2 years ago, also same time around summer, and I cruised around for like a week, and I was like, there's so much here to explore. Like there's so many little boroughs and neighborhoods, and water to me is part of that. Again, I grew up near the beach, so I'm like a water person.
Yeah.
And when you go to New York, and they're like, no, don't touch any of this stuff.
Yeah.
This is all bad. Yeah. Or if you go to Jersey Shore or something like that, it's not that far, but it's like very dingy and gross.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this is so different. Here, the beaches are very clean. California, the beaches are very clean, but not so much in New York.
Well, and it's just like the human impact on environment. It's like, we could have nice things, but
Yeah.
we sometimes move too fast in our own interests.
That's very true. That's very true. Yeah, we're here trying to have fun, but then you end up with all of the mess of living and production of quality things and the exploitation that goes on globally to get us to there.
I mean, it's no better, do better,
Right.
as long as you do better when you know better.
Yes. Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. But then if you look at something like pollution, right? What is it, like 70% of pollution is done by corporations that don't want to deal with the mess of what they're doing.
Right.
Right? Like well, we're not going to. We'll ship our garbage to China. China says they're taking care of it, but China just doesn't care. They just put it in a landfill or dump it into the ocean.
Right.
Like that's right. And we're out of sight, out of mind. We don't think about it, but that's what happens to the majority of our plastic and garbage and waste. And that's why there's, an island the size of Texas full of garbage.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and you've got to be like an aware consumer in terms of like that has become a selling point. That's become like a business of its own, and it's like where is the reality between what they're saying that they're doing versus the actual impact that they're having, and how much is for show.
Exactly.
And then, everybody has to make their own decisions as well in terms of what they can afford, because there's typically, there could be a price or a trade-off.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, what are the key things that you're gonna look out to do better in?
Right.
Because you can just get paralyzed if you are trying to do it all.
Yes. Yeah, there was a really funny skit I saw, which was exactly that, which was like once you become aware, there's like nothing you can do because everything's exploitative. Like
Right.
if you're not making your own clothing yourself, like somebody got exploited for you to get it, and it's like, oh man, it's it's one of the more aware you become, the less you can go do.
Yeah.
And they talked about, they were like, oh, maybe we'll go see a movie. And it's like, well, actually, movies, rely on third world countries to make all the CG, so we can't really do that. So I was like, okay, well, maybe we'll go to a restaurant. But they do factory farming, so all this stuff they go here and there. It's like, oh gosh, yeah.
Yeah. And you've got to live,
Yeah.
but as long as it feels like a choice and you're not like a mindless consumer.
Yeah. And and that's exactly it. And it doesn't take a lot of time to look at it and figure it out and go, okay, this is what I'm into. What are some changes that you've made recently for that to say, okay, this is a more mindful thing I'm doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty specific about like how I do my laundry.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's in the products that I use, but definitely I think it's in like a consideration of like the energy and temperature of the washing.
Mm-hmm.
Better for your clothes, and it's what I buy as well. Like I don't really shop at fast fashion brands.
Sure.
And I don't, if I buy something, I think about like cost per wear, but also, duration of wear. How does this fit in with everything that I already have? So try to be a conscious shopper in terms of, clothing, because I think like fast fashion has contributed so much to the waste.
Oh yeah.
So that's one way. What about you?
Well, you said temperature. So do you wash your clothes at a specific temperature?
Yeah, cold water is a huge. It's better for your bill.
Yeah.
In terms of kind of you've got an electric system, but cold water, it's more gentle on your clothes. So unless I'm doing towels and sheets, I wash everything on cold.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that was a thing to do, but I'll definitely start incorporating that.
It helps to prevent kind of shrinkage in your clothing.
Sure.
But also, with detergents these days, like they're just as effective. Like they're, I don't know. I think Tide had like a whole, even though Tide is like a P&G brand, and you could take your issue with them as well. But they had like a whole campaign about wash on cold.
Sure. Yeah, just to have that reduction makes sense. Just to do that a little bit less. Yeah. Yeah, for me, my big thing is I'm a big guy, so I eat a lot of food.
Mm-hmm.
And so I figure, okay, maybe I can start growing my own food. So and it's obviously in California, the weather's always nice. You can grow all year round.
Yeah.
So here I have a hydroponic system that I'm testing and playing with and trying to get that figured out. My ideal is to be able to grow enough food to eat every month.
That's awesome.
And just to have that. I also grow mushrooms, right? So mycology food mushrooms. So that same thing, and that you can do that indoors. And so it's like, okay, if I weigh this much, I'm going to need to eat about a pound of produce, a pound of beef, a pound of whatever a day. How can I get the same protein needs met in stuff that I'm growing personally?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's one of the things I really like to do, because you're using less. It's going right from your garden indoor in my living room to my kitchen. So it's like, there's no fuel, no carbon footprint or anything like that.
You have a better awareness of, how something was grown.
Exactly, yeah.
What you're putting into your body.
Exactly. No pesticides or anything like that, because it's my house. I just have to make sure my dog doesn't eat my food, and I'm good. And so that I really like. I've always liked horticulture and kind of growing my own food and growing stuff. I'm Mexican, so like that's just always been part of our lifestyle, just for work, right? So it's just one of those things. So having that, and then like you said, ethical consumption. Only having lights on at certain times, and turn the water off when I'm brushing my teeth, stuff like that. Just just those little things you can do to consume less and take up less space. And if it's like I said, it's like, you know, if we're only 30% of the problem, the other 70 is everything else that we can't control.
Right.
We can still do 30%. We can still do something, and it just feels better to do something than to not do anything at all.
Definitely. My client, when I was like my last advertising client, I worked for 3 years on a brand called Mrs. Myers. It's like a better for you cleaning brand.
Okay.
And it was interesting to see kind of what the brand stood for and what they made sure was, you know, not in their products, their goals from a packaging perspective, but then also, you know, the criticisms that they would continue to get just because their parent company was S.C. Johnson.
Oh, sure. Okay.
So it was interesting to try to, you know, you're not going to change everybody's minds, but
Yeah.
can you tell a truthful story about,
Sure.
you know, making smarter choices that are still, you know, accessible in your life. You know, you're not necessarily traveling to like a specialty store to get this product. It's available, but you know, it could be just a slightly better choice.
Exactly. Yeah. Minimizing, right? Harm reduction. You're doing just a little bit less, a little better than you were before, and it's still better. It still has to be counted. But you're right. Yeah. For me, it'd be too easy to be like, oh, it's S.C. Johnson, so like there's a giant mega soap corporation they're working for. Right. But it's like, oh, but this is the thing we're supporting. It's a niche. It's a part of it. And now with corporatization, you know, big companies buying all the little guys up, anyways. It's so hard to get away from it. There's there's no true mom and pop shop. Once they get past the state level, once they're, you know, national, then it's like, yeah, they were bought by somebody. You just don't know it for the most part.
Yeah. It's interesting to kind of interrogating the sustainability goals of my own company. We're a massive food producer. We produce primarily a French fry company. We're a potato company. We make 25% of all McDonald's French fries globally. That's a huge thing. So it's like, you know, growing potatoes is incredibly, you know, resource intensive and draws a lot from the soil.
Sure.
So for a really long time, they've, you know, tried to, you know, let farmers know about better practices and, you know, the right kind of crop rotation so that, you know, you're not depleting all of the nutrients.
Right.
But they're doing tons of research and investment into, you know, regenerative agriculture.
Sure.
And being a place of learning that we're not like necessarily just like holding that in.
Right.
But it's like, okay, what are the commitments that you've made and how do you continue to track to those? Like, what are the progress updates? And,
Sure.
So it's been interesting to kind of see where they've, you know, put their stake in the ground on things and how they're working towards it and, you know, kind of the follow-up on like, okay, cool, you said you would do that. How's that going?
Right. Are you actually doing it? Is it making sense? You know, how are you making that impact? And you're right, because it is super important, because agriculture being such a big industry for people, like growing that much food, growing those potatoes, you know, corn is another big thing here in the United States, and it's like that is all pulls from the nutrients. So how you know, for a while it was just, well, grow as much as you can, get as much money out of it as you can, and that's it. But now it's like, well, we have to think sustainability. How is that going to work in the future? How is it going to work going forward? So, you know, what plans do we have in place? Yeah. So is this the place you're working at? They do a lot? Do they actually talk the talk and walk the walk as far as that goes?
They do. They've made some big investments in terms of land, in terms of kind of research.
Yeah.
So I've definitely seen it. Also kind of a consciousness in terms of where are we making the food versus where are we selling the food.
Sure.
Just in terms of kind of that transportation impact as well.
Sure. No, that makes sense.
And they, you know, it's different market to market as well, but, you know, they've made stake in the ground about like, we're going to have entirely recyclable packaging in Canada by, you know, 2025 or whatever. And that's a big undertaking.
Definitely.
For a company to do, but it's also private.
Okay.
So when they put these goals in, and you know, our bonus or our whatever is linked to the payoff on these commitments, you know, you see a more regular tracking to what they said they would do versus how it's going.
I see. Oh, you know what? It says Uber Lyft drop off over here, not over here. So I'm gonna.
That's perfect. Wherever you think.
Sounds good.
I haven't been down here yet.
Yeah, I remember I was here a couple weeks ago, and like people were wanting to get picked up over there, and Uber tries to send you there, but it's like I have to go here, and so I would have to cancel rides because people were like, "Can you come get me?" It's like, "No, I can't."
Yeah.
And you're not going to be here for 15 minutes, so I'm not going to wait. It was like, just get another one when you get to where you're supposed to go. But here we go. So here's the drop off right here.
Perfect.
All right. Well, it was so nice chatting.
Yeah,
I hope you have a great
same.
rest of your day.
Thank you. Hope you can get into the non-smoggy air. Hopefully that resolves itself soon.
Hopefully. Have a
Thank
good
you.
one. See ya.